to get it for free, and all of a sudden the world is going to be nice and rosy. You're going to make an investment here. You're going to make an investment that should have a return. Now, part of the discussion of using tax dollars is, are we throwing money into a hole? No. You should have a business plan, just like a business owner would do it, that says, we are going to spend X dollars. We are going to see a return in 3 years. We are going to save X dollars across 5 years, and the amount of money we invested will end up saving us 3 times that money across a decade. Now, if you look at the problem from that standpoint, it's an easy one to convince the voting population that we should spend some tax money. Issue a bond, spend $1 million, and then say we're going to save $3 million across 3 years. I'll vote for that. Issue a bond and say we're going to spend $1 million and we'll never see a return, and you're not going to get me to do anything for that.
So playing the softer side of Ken, because I can see you shaking your head there. I do understand that some communities find themselves to be too small to be able to allocate the budget for this. I would propose the concept of what in real estate is used as a net lease, in which case the land is literally leased to a company or a person, and they're allowed to build whatever they want on it with the contingent that they take it down at the end. But a lot of the times at the end of the lease, it's negotiated that the owner of the land takes back whatever buildings are on it. And it's a way for entrepreneurs in real estate to leverage the financial resources of a big company or somebody else to build a house for them on the land or an office building. You can, if you get really creative, it gets dangerous and it does get risky, but if you're really creative with this, you can find ways to do a net lease. You can use, for example, look at your cable franchise. It's a great place to start because you already have conduit in the ground. One of the things that we did in the city of Cambridge is we, in our cable franchise, require when they're laying our cable conduit to lay a second conduit for municipal use. It's wholly owned by the government. They can't tell us what to do with it. And that's how we pulled our fiber. We have a second ordinance that says, gosh, guys, if you have conduit and we need to get from point A to point B, we're going to blow our fiber through your conduit. These are great ways to kind of bootstrap your way to success. But I would caution at the end of the day who owns the assets. There are 2 classes of assets to consider. You have your enduring assets, which are things like a metro access fiber network, that you upgrade the endpoints of it, and the fiber itself, the optical cable, never needs to be upgraded. I mean, you're talking about how many strands you have through it. Is it OC3? Is it OC12? Is it OC148? That's a bit of a difference there that you might have to upgrade. But you can actually, if you just go from SONET to WDM, upgrade the network by changing the equipment on the endpoints without almost any of the major expenses of pulling the cables. So that's a great way to start looking at, well, maybe we can make a community investment in the metro access network that's a huge economy of scale for our community. We can now run our cell towers off of it because most cell towers are backhauled by T1s. We can put our community network, both our network for municipal services, including VoIP services and some of the high bandwidth services that Ken was talking about, as well as a Wi-Fi network or other wireless network for the rest of the community. And this is pretty much, your access points are cheap. These things run anywhere from $50 up to about $8,700 is the highest I've heard for an access point. These things are pretty inexpensive, so they're pretty much, at this point, I would tell you, semi-throwaway. But your fiber network's not. And it's the differentiation between which is something that a municipality might consider important to invest in and what's something that you might want to let a company or other non-public entity take on.
Let me address it from a different perspective, Gary. 25,000, a smaller community. Everybody likes free, but they're going to be worried about how do they pay or afford for something like that, internet, high speed or broadband, with the limited income that population may have. It's a tough sell, but I would suggest that in a community of 25,000 people, the first thing you could do is go out and poll your citizens and poll the businesses that are there and find out what kind of a public-private partnership can come. And then you'll gauge whether or not your community is going to be responsive to any type of investment whatsoever. And that's it. I mean, a lot of the things that we're talking about, I think, unfortunately, we tend to look from a larger city perspective, 100,000 and up. But the net of it is, in a community of 25,000 residents, you're going to have to take their pulse and see whether or not affordable, what does affordable mean? Affordable means something different in a community of your size versus a community of 100,000 people and higher.
Dovetailing into what Tony was saying, don't try to build it all at once. It's not necessary. You could start off with a metro area just to light up downtown. Start off small, and as the demand rises, let your constituents come back to you in support of you politically, and so that you can wring it out. One of the biggest mistakes that I've observed in the industry is that commitments are made for the duration that it will take to build the network out, for the indoor coverage that it will provide, and things such as this. By reining that in and creating a demand in the centralized area, testing it, getting the constituents on board who will use it, you'll be able to gauge what the tolerance is for investment to go ahead and build out the network, and for that matter, if it's really going to be necessary. We espouse even an on-demand model to where you don't say, I'm going to give everybody indoor coverage.